Well, when I asked the question, what should I talk about in this video podcast, Brian Fairbrother, who is the youth animator for York's Scarborough Episcopal area, heard me tell a story at the Youth Ministry Formation Day that happened at Trinity Aurora last Saturday. And the minute he heard me immediately upon hearing me tell the story, what he wanted me to talk about in this podcast was what happened to me when I was rector at St. Columba and All Hallows. We were talking about the annual Gay Pride Parade and some of the inappropriate things that happen at the Gay Pride Parade, and the way that people sometimes dress, or more to the point, don't dress, and some of the things that are said, and the nature of that gathering every year. You know, Integrity Toronto and the Proud Anglicans have been marching in that parade for a long, long time with other Christian groups of gay people. And I didn't arrive at my position of being sympathetic, empathetic, and at unity with gay Anglicans very easily. I had to go through a process during which I had to examine my assumptions about people and come to some decisions about who I was and was not in a position to judge, and under what circumstances I could make judgments about them. But the story that I was telling, that Brian wanted me to tell in this video podcast, is a story from when I was rector of St. Columba and All Hallows Church in East York. And that was quite some time ago. One of our church wardens in those years was a gay man out of the closet, not flamboyant, but certainly direct about the fact that was who he was, and he was charming and a lovely man, and it was a real gift to have him as a deputy church warden. One Sunday he came to speak to me, and he asked me, would I come and walk with him with Integrity Toronto in the Gay Pride Parade with the rest of the Proud Anglicans. And he said, and I must have been very uncomfortable, and he could see that. And he looked closely at me, and lovingly he asked me, "Are you my priest?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am." And he said, "Then as my priest, can you walk with me on my walk?" And my heart melted, and I could not say no. And I said yes. And out of the kind of internal conflict that drives so much of my decision making, and I think many other people as well, I immediately had misgivings and second thoughts about what I was doing. Most of them grounded in my own fear. Fear that I was shooting my chances for promotion in the church in the foot. Fear that who I am would be misunderstood if I walked in that parade. Fear, just lots of fear. Well, what I did, I walked in that parade, and I have to say that most of the things that I was afraid of continued to be fears for me. I felt very vulnerable. I was aware of thousands of people on the sidewalk watching us go by as we walked, and I was aware of the assumptions that they were making about me, about my sexuality, about my personhood, assumptions that are not warranted. I was aware of feeling very, very like I was taking a huge risk. That doors would close, that people would close their minds to me, and that I would no longer be accepted in some places and by some people based on the fact that I was standing on that pavement and moving forward, surrounded by the people that I was surrounded by, in the place where I was, in that common stream of humanity on that day. That sense of vulnerability, that feeling of risk. Since then, I have come to understand that that's the core of the gospel. Will you stand with people? Will you appreciate them as fellow human beings, created and loved by God, just as you are? Those were the challenges that fellow was making to me when he said, "If you are my priest, can you walk my walk?" I don't do that anymore. For a number of years, it hasn't been something that was high on my list of priorities. But there are many, many of my colleagues who do, and many Anglicans affiliated with Integrity Toronto, proud Anglicans in the diocese, who take part in that parade, surrounded by other Christians. They lump all the Christian groups together. And every year it's a little oasis of serenity, calm, and grace in a long parade that reflects many, many priorities, values, walks of life, and different ways of being. And in that way, the Gay Pride Parade is, in microcosm, the world we live in. Now I have one other story about my travel from being insulated from gay awareness and towards being accepting of people regardless of their sexuality. And this is a story that I don't tell very often. It's a story about when I was in my early 20s and I was an undergraduate student at Huron College at the University of Western Ontario. I had a friend. We used to play guitar together and write songs. And I would say that we were pretty good. His name was Kevin Capstick. And I used to walk from my apartment with my guitar, in its case, across Victoria Park in the middle of London and to Kevin's house. It was about a 15-20 minute walk away from where I was living. One winter day, walking across that park with my tweed jacket on and a huge long scarf that my grandmother had knit me. Now this scarf, I asked her for a scarf in the Western colors, which were purple and white. But what she knit me, she didn't have purple. She did have pink. The scarf had stripes. It had white, gray, and a dusty rose kind of stripes. And it was a long, long scarf, longer than 6 feet, maybe 8 feet long. So I wrapped that scarf around myself and it kept me warm all winter long. And I was grateful of it because my grandmother had made it for me. But in retrospect, the scarf, like clothing often does, broadcast a message that was not a true message, but it broadcast a message. This one night, as I was walking across Victoria Park on my way to Kevin's, an awful thing happened. Two fellows came out onto the path in front of me, and one of them held out a knife and said, "Give me all your coin. Give me all your coin." I thought that was a really funny way to talk. I'd never heard anything like that before. And I had nothing. I took out my wallet and showed him. There was nothing in it. I didn't have any credit cards at that time. I was a poor student. In that year, I ate a lot of potatoes, actually, because you get a lot of bulk for cheap. And I still look like I eat a lot of potatoes to this day. And what they did was, when they realized that I didn't have anything, they ran away. I made my way to Kevin's. He helped me call the police. And they came, and they took a statement from me. And they drove around. A little while later, it was months later, I was back in Windsor for the summer. And I got a phone call that I should come to the court on a certain day, and that they were going to pay my train fare to come from Windsor to London in order to give a witness testimony. They had caught the guys, and they were coming up for trial, and I was supposed to identify them. And I sat in that courtroom on that day, and the statement that one of them had made in his confession to the police was read out. And in the statement was the line, "We decided to go to Victoria Park and roll a faggot for $20 for a case of beer." At that point, I realized that they thought that I was gay. And looking back at the way I dressed when I was a student, which at times could be a little bit outre, I can almost understand, especially given my grandmother's scarf, with its white and gray and dusty rose, how they arrived at that conclusion. I understand how they arrived at that conclusion. But to hear that read out in court, and knowing that then I was going to be called into the witness box to identify them, and that it had just been made a statement in court that they were robbing me, and in doing so they were, quote, rolling a faggot, that I had been lumped, categorized, labeled as a homosexual person. In reflecting on that, as I came home on the train, I began to understand a little bit, just an edge, of how much pain there must be in some gay people as they navigate through a world that thinks them so alien, strange, different. So, I wanted to talk about those two things, both walking in the parade at the request of one of my deputy church wardens all those years ago, and how I came to have an experience of identity with people whose self-identity and whose sexual behaviors are very different than mine. But now I understand how it feels to be labeled, to be identified as different. And I wonder what you think of all of this. Of course, you're welcome to write whatever you wish in the comments, and I bid you grace and peace. May God richly bless you.